Hi, I'm Amelie Sherry, and this is Isaac Raya. I'm Isaac's student teacher for 8th grade U.S. History. And so for one of my grad classes, we're learning about teaching techniques. And so he's going to share with us a couple of successful techniques that he uses and likes for his classes. So take it away.
The first one that I'll share with you is a front load that I do at the beginning of every unit. Since it's a history class, it's about a story that happens, and it's important that the kids understand the story. I feel like before the unit starts to go, they understand the totality of the story from the beginning and the end, so that you're able to go more in depth as the story goes. And what I do is I give them a few pictures that they trace over while I'm telling the story of the unit. So, for instance, at the beginning of this year, I'm telling the story of how the Declaration of Independence came to be.
Here we go.
How the Declaration of Independence came to be, and I tie some of the elements that the kids learned from the 7th grade World History Standards in, so that they're a little familiar with what had happened at the end of their year, the last year that they were in school for 7th grade, and then a couple of the key events that happened while the Americans were colonists, and then it ends with the Declaration of Independence. And I tell that in a small picture format, so while the kids are listening to the story, I give them just a couple of key terms that they remember. They're able to write down on their set of pictures what has happened as I'm telling the story, and then we'll take a break and then discuss as a class some of the significance of the terms and the events. And then what that it enables me to do is be able to reference back as I'm teaching the unit back to the pictorial input that they're already familiar with, so that they understand the sequence of the story.
So the big purpose of that one is really just, if I'm getting the trick correctly, is just to give them a big picture of how it unfolds and then dissect each one individually. So they have somewhere to insert the details in the story.
Okay. Yeah, it's about the big picture and understanding the sequence of and why things happen the way that they do with large events. So that they are able to relate back in the middle of the unit back to the story.
Great. And so what's another technique that you
Another
use?
technique that I use is a reading and writing technique. It also has to do with critical thinking. So it's about short responses. And we begin teaching about short response writing, which I think is a critical skill in junior high and then in high school, in a formatted way. And what I end up doing is I teach them about a 6-sentence paragraph, and the 6 sentences have very specific sentences that they need to write. And I think this follows with everyone. I mean, everyone's very familiar with the 5-sentence paragraph, but mine is 6. Topic sentence and a concluding sentence at the top and bottom. It's very easy for them to write. It's basically a yes or no answer for each one, and they're very general. And then they get into details that they pull. The second sentence is a detail, and they'll take something from the reading that we've done and they'll use it as a detail. And then the third sentence will be a supporting sentence, and that sentence needs to use explanation words like the reason why, or this causes, or explains, or therefore. And then the fourth sentence after that is another detail sentence that helps to further explain their point. And then they explain again in a supporting sentence using those words again. So it ends up being a formatted paragraph where they know exactly what they have to write, and they have to use details in order to get points for it. After that, then what we end up doing is grading the paragraphs using a peer review system, and the kids will rotate through each one of their papers about maybe 4 or 5 times, and they'll understand how to write a paragraph in a formatted way, so that they're writing more than just one sentence, which is always a significant accomplishment getting students to do. And then writing with details and then explaining those details. And then when I give them specific points for having those sentences then they start to understand how they really need to write. After there's a little bit of mastery with those paragraphs, after you've repeated that exercise about 4 or 5 times, then you can start to overlay like critical thinking skills on top of that, like looking at an event, using a discipline of like looking at things in a cause and effect manner, or looking at something that happens over time and repeats itself over time, or looking at an event and using a microscope of or a lens of like ethics. I think that that is one of my top strategies to do, is like to teach them how to use this short answer format.
So you give them that scaffold to help them with their writing literacy at first, and then slowly you take that away as the year goes on and insert other scaffolds to build their critical thinking.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Great. And what other tips do you have for new teachers when it comes to employing different teaching techniques over the course of the year?
I recommend that you, as a new teacher, that you figure out what you like, and that you practice that, and then you try new things, and you see what works for you and what works for your students, and then you put those things in a rotation. So, for instance, if you do like teaching about a paragraph system, and you develop the way that you implement that particular strategy, and you practice it over and over again, and then what ends up happening is that you can make that particular strategy, whatever it is, you can go really in depth with that as you find that your students get to more familiar with it, and then you get more familiar with that strategy. So I recommend that that teachers, new teachers especially, try out all kinds of strategies. There's so many strategies out there, and so many books that are written about strategies that really the testing of new strategies is
That develop the literacy of reading, writing,
right.
critical
And
thinking.
you figure out what you want to have in your classes. Like, do you want like the critical thinking? Do you want them to be able to write really well? Do you want them to be able to understand the story really well? Do you want them to have, what kind of skills do you want your kids to have?
Great. Well, thank you, Mr. Raya.
Oh, you're very welcome, Sherry.